Welcome back, everyone. I know you're really excited to hear from our next speaker, who was just a member of our panel, Jeremiah Camara. And Jeremiah is both an author and documentary filmmaker. Pardon me. His work explores how religion and the church impact and limit the Black community, as well as the religious roots of racism in America. His powerful YouTube series entitled Slave Sermons has been widely watched and is highly regarded. We are honored to have Jeremiah sharing his insights with us today. Welcome, Jeremiah Camara.
Oh, wow. Thanks for having me, Janice. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to talk about imagery. This has been the horse that I've been riding for quite some time. In America, and I'm not going to say that we're overlooking it. I just don't think we're paying enough attention to it. What it has done, what it continues to do. Okay. My film covered a lot of it. My film, Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism in America, dealt with a lot of these issues. And what Holy Hierarchy was about, it was about how the people during colonial America, had this belief in God, and how these notions led to, beliefs in, supreme human beings, and how these beliefs worked their way into the legal system, ultimately turning racism into an institution. But at that time, many people were illiterate. Okay, so it wasn't a lot of reading going on, but what was available were pictures and were images. Okay, and they are very powerful. And so what we did was we created a nonprofit organization called ERICA, and that's Ending Religious Iconography in America. I think that images play a big role in separating groups of people, creating notions of inferiority, creating notions of superiority, and just giving pretexts pretexts are just rules and laws on how to treat one another based upon what we have heard or what we have seen. And I just don't think that we can downplay the imagery in this country. What imagery does, and I'm talking about biblical imagery that you can see just about everywhere: Walgreens, CVS, gas stations, hotels, hospitals, where else? Movies, books, everywhere. They're ubiquitous. But what I'm thinking is they're so ubiquitous that we just tend to not even notice it. And sometimes the thing that is the most closest to us, we see the least. I just went up to Sprouts the other day. You know the store Sprouts where you get your holistic type of stuff. And right there at the register was, white Jesus. But I don't think anybody who walks through there actually pays attention to that. So we're just regular people, and we're trying to do things that are not so regular. What we want to do is eliminate, or either just totally reduce or totally eliminate biblical imagery throughout the United States. There are many Black churches right now that have white Jesus stained into their glass, into the glass at their church. And my thing is, if Jesus is white or is depicted as white, because to me he's a myth, and we should all know that by now in the 21st century. I don't want to get too offensive here, but we should kind of know that no one walked on water was born of a virgin. But if he is white, then I think we should all understand white supremacy a little better. If Jesus is white, why do we complain against white supremacy? Because if he was Black, I certainly would feel esteem. I would feel racial esteem. I would feel as though, hey, wait a minute, this God is made in my image. He's not made in your image, he's made in my image. So I definitely would walk around with my chest stuck out a little bit. Now, there's a lot of Blacks that want to paint Jesus Black, right? If Jesus is Black, he's got a lot of explaining to do. Okay. And not only does he have a lot of explaining to do, but we should be really embarrassed to say that, because here it is, you're black and you would have your group, your ethnicity on the bottom rungs of society. That's embarrassing. You just can't take Jesus and dip him in chocolate and caramel and then make him, no, he's white. And I say Jesus is white. Why is he white? Well, he's white because he's white in Walmart. Okay, that's why he's white. Walmart is the largest retailer on this earth. And this is what we want to do. Imagery and iconography often has a deeper and more of a longer lasting effect than words on paper. It's also effective because it allows the person viewing the image to actually create scenes in their mind. So iconography, used effectively, can cause people to create scenes in their own perception, making a connection to memories and experiences. I remember when I was young, my mother had an image of white Jesus on my kitchen table. And I knew that this was real. And Jesus had to be real because everywhere I moved, the eyes followed me. And I was like, whoa, this has got to be real. But what happened is, as a black boy, I was imprinted upon. Now, like if you go to court, for example, and you see, say you're in there for stealing for murder, and then the prosecutor says, well, he also stole this back in 1986 or whatever like that. The defense attorney is going to say, throw that out because it has nothing to do with this case. But the jury already heard it, and it's resonating in their minds. Even though it was motion to be thrown out, the jury has already heard it. And that's what imprinting does. I don't care if you belong to the Black Panther Party or the Nation of Islam. When you think of Jesus, that first impression is a white man, because that's what this nation has embedded us with, has imprinted us with. Now, you have Netflix. Netflix has a couple of series going on. This is why I cannot be a part of Netflix anymore. I had to unsubscribe from Netflix. They had Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Do you know the millions of people that watch this? You say you want to end notions of white supremacy. You say you want to kumbaya. You say you want to come together. But yet you have the temerity and the audacity to do something that's not based in anything historical, but based in strictly belief. So now we're going to have these series of Mark, Matthew, and they're all white. Joel Osteen, I think he just created this one series, this one movie, I think it was called Resurrection or something like that. Now, Joel Osteen, he had Kanye West, he had Tyler Perry, so I think he means well, but he doesn't know any better, because the default dial is automatically tuned to whites. So Joel Osteen created this resurrection. Well, guess what? They were all white characters. Now, what does that do to me and my children and my grandchildren when they see that? So my daughter, of course, when she was young, I was doing some research and I had these images, and she said, Baba, that's Jesus right there, because someone, maybe her aunt or uncle, had told her about this. And I had to explain to her that Jesus was a myth. But those people who do not have the advantage of someone who can explain to them what this is about, what's going to happen to their psyche. And this is what I'm saying. I just don't think enough attention is being given to this. I mentioned earlier in the panel that the government and religion have always worked side by side. The Romans pandered to the government and vice versa to get what they, needed. In 1667, the Virginia legislature wrote into law the principle that God himself was white, and not only white, on the side of the slave masters. This is what slavery did. It created a mindset, an inferior type of mindset, not based off of what one had been reading, but what one had been hearing, but specifically what one was seeing. And I demonstrated in my film how throughout the film there was imagery that was all around that the enslaved blacks could see, who Jesus actually was. So I think that we need to really, pay attention to this and actually create lawsuits, because I think it should be illegal to do that. White religious iconography is routinely seen, okay, throughout the country. One of the most, one of the retail stores that has probably, I would say, more of a saturation of white biblical imagery is Hobby Lobby. Has anybody been to Hobby Lobby? If you walk into Hobby Lobby and you don't see that, then that means that we are part of that problem. We don't even notice it. It's like trying to read, a book like this. You can't even see it until you step back from it. But Hobby Lobby is saturated. It is inundated with white imagery. Now, if we were to go to Time magazine and Life magazine and Newsweek magazine and many other magazines, especially around Easter and the Christmas season, they probably didn't even realize what they did, the psychological damage that they produced. To them, it's just an innocuous, just an innocent little, picture of Jesus on the cover. These movies that are out, Heaven is for Real, where the little boy described Jesus. He had blue eyes and things like that. I mean, you think that blacks don't go see these movies as well? Blacks are psychologically, messed up to the degree where when you mention that Jesus is white, oh, what difference does color make? I had Jehovah's Witnesses to knock on my door, and every single one of those pamphlets, there's a white image. And they will be the first one to say, well, it doesn't matter. Well, if it doesn't matter, then why does it only have white images on there? We think that we're not paying attention to these things, but we are, because the subconscious perceives things in totality. Just like you guys see the background here, you guys could probably tell me how many books subconsciously are on this back row right here, okay? When you go to these stores, the magazine rack, especially where the religious part, they usually sit low. Well, guess who else walks low? You have children that are doing these things. So I think they're doing a disservice. Can you imagine, let's look at Clarence Thomas for an example. And I'm not going to beat up on the guy. He is who he is. He thinks what he thinks. He believes what he believes. Look, I'm not going to beat up on Clarence Thomas. I don't know him personally. But he's been called a number of things by black people. Okay. Clarence Thomas went to Catholic schools. Do you know how saturated Catholicism is with imagery? Schools like Baylor, Davidson, Holy Cross, Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. Can you imagine going into the Cathedral of Notre Dame and imagine what kind of imagery that you're going to see? So all of these people, the millions and millions of people who've been in Notre Dame, don't think that their subconscious was turned off once they got into there. Their subconscious is turned on. So when a white cop goes and does something to an unarmed black person, how do we know that white nativity scene that he's been seeing since he was 5 years old, he thinks that Jesus is white, just like Megyn Kelly said, well, Jesus is white. This is what Bill O'Reilly and Hannity and Megyn Kelly, this is what these people actually believe. So if Jesus is white, then who in the hell made black people then? If Adam and Eve are white, then where are the black people? We know that has no scientific basis on that at all. But this is a country that is being ran by false beliefs. And I think that this is part of the problem. Christianity breeds separatism. Okay, and I don't want to give my film away, but it does. If you go to the Bible, and I have some excerpts from the Bible right here, it says that, God chose this particular group of people to be special. This is what your God did. The Lord loved Israel. This is in your Bible. It didn't say he loved Congo, or he loved Ghana, or he loved Mali, or he loved Egypt. It didn't say that, okay? God chose Jacob unto himself. God went to redeem for a people to himself. Separate them from amongst all the people. And I have chosen the seed of Abraham are just a few examples of what you can see in the Bible. Now, to have a feeling of superiority, you have to be backed by something. Just like the dollar bill was once backed by gold and it gave the dollar its value, whites during colonial times were backed by the notion that Jesus was white, by the laws, by the government who put this in writing, that gave them the backing of the notions and the precepts of supremacy. These notions have stayed with us to this day. I am not going to give it away, but when you watch the film Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism in America, you will hear what the great Thomas Jefferson had to say about Black people. We can move, we've all moved out of Virginia, but we still have a Virginia mindset. Now, you may have someone, let's say Trump, for example. I'm not a political type of person. I have not watched the news since March the 11th, 2020. I'm talking CNN, Fox, MSNBC, or my local news. I cannot tell you the freedom that I have. I cannot begin to tell. I thought freedom from religion was liberating. Freedom from the news is extremely liberating because the news, in my opinion, this is another subject, but they are the greatest homogenizing elements that we have out here. And they keep the ism, no matter what ism you're in, capitalism, socialism, totalitarianism, whatever, communism. It is the news media that is the homogenizing agent that brings unlike people together. I went in a Korean store the other day and I had my mask down here. And me and this Korean person, we had nothing in common. We eat differently. We listen to different music. We dress differently. Our cultures couldn't be more different. But we both had the mask on because fear, everyone, can pick up on that. But I have not watched news. I just wanted to throw that little PSA announcement in there of how liberating it is to get rid of the news. But Christianity, the images have always played a role in the world, to manipulate and influence the beliefs of people. Mm-hmm. And so you're talking about these people that are in office, that are Trump's age, that are Biden's age, that are, of the age of many of the men that we see in the Oval Office and all these things. They grew up watching movies like the Ten Commandments. They did. Come on, they grew up watching the King of Kings. They all saw these movies. How is it that you can watch the King of Kings and the Ten Commandments and then look at me like I'm your equal? There were no Black people in the Ten Commandments. There were a few. They were, of course, laborers, but they weren't central to the theme of the movie. Mel Gibson went and made close to $1 billion in The Passion of the Christ. Do you know how many Black people went to see that movie who were actually throwing up? And it's crazy because here it is. You watch Jesus, who basically had a bad weekend. Jesus caught hell from Friday to Sunday. That was the Passion. But you have grandfathers and great-grandfathers and great-great-great-grandfathers whose whole life was bad. And you have more sympathy for a mythological figure that you don't even know anything about than you have for your own ancestors who caught hell their entire life. But this is the power of what imagery can do, okay? If you go to the page, go to the website, ericanonprofit.org, okay? It's an opportunity to donate. We're going to work hard at ending this problem out here, okay? Because nobody, no non-white or white, should be subjected to imagery based off of an ideology. I should not have to go down I-75 and run into dozens of the most traveled highway on earth and run into dozens and dozens of billboards that do not, look like me, that have this Jesus image that's on there. I think that is abuse.
Jeremiah, excuse me for interrupting. We do have some questions. I wondered.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. How can I, as a white person and a college teacher, talk to my students about how religion has kept the Black community from thriving without being labeled as a racist in today's woke culture on campuses?
Listen, race, to be labeled a racist has now become a moral thing. Okay? No one wants that. You're going to lose contracts. You're going to lose shoe contracts. You're going to lose endorsements. You're going to lose your job. So this is why you see the commercials. Blacks are 13% of the population, but we're 95% of the commercials. We're 95% of the commercials. It is rare to see a commercial that doesn't have a Black in it, okay? So what you're doing is you're trying to appease us. My point is we cannot worry about too much about what someone thinks about us. Tell the truth. And I would not be too afraid to do that. Speak truthfully, because when you speak the truth, it's going to go a long way. Just like you have Dr. She was in my film, and that's a shame. I could kick myself in the teeth right now. Dr. Robin DiAngelo. Robin DiAngelo is a college professor. She is unapologetic, going around the country talking about racism and religion's role in racism and how it has damaged Black people and how it has given whites a psychological advantage. Look, if Blacks and whites were two teams competing, on American turf, whites would definitely have the home field advantage. Okay, I'm not playing a woe is me card here, because I don't do that. I'm not, no, I'm not doing that. But I'm just saying, psychologically speaking, why? Well, amongst many things, your God is white. If you just Google the image of God, just Google that and see what comes up. Now, here it is. During this whole COVID crisis now, right? You can censor things, because we've been censored. Like Daryl Ray was saying, we think we're freer than we really are in this country. We're not. Fauci became the new God. Thou shalt have no other virologist opinions before Anthony Fauci. Thou have no other virologist before Fauci, okay? If you tried to put anything on YouTube or Facebook that was anti-Fauci, you were censored, okay? My point is, America has no problem censoring you. But when you Google the image of God, just type in all kind of white, why don't you censor that? You talk about Black Lives Matter. What about Black minds? See, and for those Black people who are not even there, that shows how damaged things have become, where you don't even notice that, okay? Getting back to that cop who maybe does something, shoots a Black guy who was unarmed, how do we know that what he hasn't seen year round in his daily orientation, especially, I wish I could say, maybe in his rural area or mainly white town that he lives in. But I live in Atlanta. And last Easter, there were 6 billboards in the middle of Atlanta that had pictures of white Jesus. What are you implying? What is the implication here? What are you really saying? I can tell you what you're saying. You're saying we're superior. You're saying we're holier, we're more divine. And just look, we have more. So you know Jesus had to be white, because look at whites. We're on the top, you're on the bottom. It reinforces that. You see what I mean? If there's any more questions, I'll take them. It doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah, this is so interesting. Do you know of a truth and reconciliation movement to address the interpersonal, family, and public trauma / oppression, including faith-based trauma in America?
I don't. You know, I've been busy with a lot of things that I do, filmmaking. So Marlene would know, and I'm sure Daryl Ray would know. You know, so I don't know of any organizations like that. But let me just say this: I'm going to get back on that horse that I've been riding, because I mean, I'm going to stop, but I could talk about this for the longest because it bothers me. It really does. When we subject Blacks and non-whites to images that reflect an ethnicity different than their own, we inherently do a psychological disservice to that individual. Okay. What happens is that non-white person perceives this image as something that's authentic and historical, and unconsciously or subconsciously perceives themselves as being subordinate. And you know, we have to be mindful of the psychology of all human beings. Like I said, we proudly claim that Black lives matter, Black minds matter just as much. So Walmart, you're the largest retailer, Walgreens, CVS, all of the hospitals. There are very few hospitals that you can go in where when you walk into that lobby, they don't have biblical imagery. Your hospital could be 60% full of Black people. And I want to, you know, and I will say this. I don't know, because I don't have anything to back this up, but I will say probably about 90% of racism is probably unintentional. You just don't know any better. You just don't. I'm not going to make the claim that Walmart, who sells millions of nativity scenes with that white Jesus on there, and when you go to ericanonprofit.org, you'll see just a smidget, a thimble's worth of imagery. I don't think that they say, oh, I'm going to mess Black people's mind up and we're going to produce. I don't think they're doing that. But I think that the default dial to all that is intelligent, to all that is divine, to all that is beautiful, that dial is turned to whites. You could go on investigative ID, okay, or forensic files or whatever, and they talk about the victim. The first thing they'll say, oh, she was blonde and she had blue eyes. She was beautiful. What does that have to do with the fact that she was murdered? We're not talking about her blonde hair and blue eyes, but this fascination, this is what I'm saying when it comes to what people would say, the spirit, the mind, and the body, the divinity, the body, the beauty, the divinity, the imagery of, you know, God, and the intelligence. You think of intelligence, you see a white man in a lab coat, you're not going to think of them. The only Black person on earth that is routinely called a genius that I know of, and I could be wrong, is Barry Harris. Barry Harris is a musician. And my wife said, well, that's the field of music. That doesn't count. But I see it a little bit different because music is life. And so music has taught me a lot about life. Okay. But I want whites to be appalled. And I want them to say something. And I want them to speak. And I want them to write me. You can go to slavesermons@gmail.com, or you can go to ericanonprofit.org@gmail.com and send me that image and tell me where you saw it. But if you're not upset with the billboards, with the schools and the universities, with your church that you attend, if you can sit there and watch that white stained Jesus in the wall and it doesn't affect you in any way, you're part of the problem. So don't tell me that you're not, oh, I'm not, like I said, whites do not want to be called racist because they're going to lose money. You know, first, back in the day, you didn't mind. Whites didn't mind. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. But now, so America feels as though it's kind of doing us a service. We're not going to say the N-word. We're going to banish and outlaw all racist people. We actually think that the field is being leveled. It's not psychologically, and it's not economically either. Until we level the playing field economically, this is still segregation because the money is segregated. The opportunity to own commercial land, less than 1% of Black people own commercial land. And when we talk about the ability to, why don't you, Blacks, pull yourselves up by your boots to get your own Netflix, get your own AT&T, get your own Amazon Prime. You're forgetting one thing. It's called dynastic wealth. There's a wealth that existed before any of us was born, hundreds of years old, that there's no way you're going to get past that dynastic wealth. So there's only certain things that we can do, only certain opportunities that we have. In the midst of all of this disproportionate reality, America still has the audacity to accept that Walmart, and I'm picking on them, but you can go to anyone, I don't care, go to any place. People that do these billboards, this Amish group that puts out 600 billboards that are seen by 9 million people every day. You don't have a problem with that. You don't have a problem with printing Bibles. Tell me a Bible, that is printed by a white publisher with Black people in it. What are you implying? And this is what I'm saying. The implications speak for themselves. Now, on my way to, go to my place of business, I pass down this street, and I don't know what ethnicity that they are. I don't care. I don't even focus on that kind of stuff. But they got a white Jesus that's sitting right out there in front, right by their mailbox, almost like a stand there. Do you know how many Black people pass by that? Now, Blacks could easily say, I'm not paying attention. You are, though. Your subconscious really is paying attention to that because it perceives things in totality. I think it ought to be outlawed. I think it ought to be banned. I think it ought to be abolished. These are all synonyms, whatever synonym you can put on it. But there's no way that my grandchild should be able to walk into the dental office like my dentist. I saw that Bible book. I started to steal it. If I was a thief, I would have just stolen it. But I resisted the temptation to steal that damn book. But at my dental office, right there, you know the book, I got it right there. It's called the Bible. You open it up, there's no Black characters in there. None. What are you really saying? What is the message that you're really getting? So I'm going to end it there. And I just want everyone to visit ericanonprofit.org. Email us at ericanonprofit.org@gmail.com. Send me your comments. Send me all of your pictures. We're going to get attorneys. We're going to get people, other secular groups to work with us, to write the government, to write the manufacturers, the producers of all this stuff, to end white iconography in America. If you're really serious about so-called equality, whatever that is, there's no money in equality, first of all. But if you're serious about bringing, racism to a halt or whatever, it's got to start with that image. You could say that, but you keep this image, then you're contradicting yourself.
Yes. Are you open to a couple more questions, Jeremiah?
Absolutely.
Okay. How many generations do you think are required to internalize a difference like the ones you are talking about with white Jesus?
Good question. I'll let you guys in on something that a lot of Blacks say. And I've heard white people say this too, but they say, boy, a lot of them old white men, they got to just go. They got to die. That's a bad thing to say, but they do say that. I'm not going to lie to you. Those old white men, they got to die. because they're carrying with them baggage that they're not going to be able to let go of. Now, that's a tough question. But as long as we keep, the TV on to the extent that we do, there's nothing wrong with television. There's just an imbalance of, we watch too damn much of it, if you ask me. You can watch my documentary though, but we tend to watch too much. But there's so many shows, even in the background. Hell, even a Spike Lee show. Spike Lee. It was called Red Hook Summer. And in the background of the black preacher was this big white Jesus. I'm like, Spike, what are you doing? But I know what he's doing because Spike walks around with the big cross around his neck. So I know you're pretty much, not there all the way. But as far as the generations are concerned, I have a friend, he says that it's about 50 years. I think it's actually more. They say that slavery was 22 generations or something like that. I think I've heard that, 18 to 22 generations of people. I'm not sure about that, but it's going to take many, many years. But the way to start is just, let me give you an example. Say, for instance, if you're in Hollywood and they blackball you, well, the way they blackball you is just not to deal with you. They don't show you on anything. If they have a problem with what you're saying, we just won't show you anything. Well, that's a pretty good stand. That's the way to do it. Instead of talking about you, we just don't show you. Do that with imagery. Do that with iconography. Just don't show it. We have to start from there, and then we'll see how many generations it's going to take. I don't really know.
Very thoughtful. Someone else has a question too. Can you comment on the white Jesus connection to the argument for white Santa and how such religious adjacent imagery has impacted the Black American experience?
We don't want to tell the truth. It's like, I don't know. I mean, there's they call it testicular fortitude, but our families are frightened. Like, I had children too. We've never been to church. We've never celebrated Christmas, and we're okay. We didn't spontaneously combust. We're fine. We're a Black family. We're doing well. My wife owns a business. I own a business. My daughter owns a business. My son's a software engineer. We're cool. We never went to church. We never celebrated Christmas. Okay? But we're so afraid. Let me tell you how I did Christmas really quick. I took my children, I said, let's go out in the backyard. I said, you see this tree right here? I said, yeah. I said, well, this tree, if it has sap in it, if you cut it right here, you'll see some. I said, that's his blood. Birds live in this tree. Insects live in it. It's alive. It's breathing. Should we cut it and kill it and bring it in the house? And they said, no. I said, where are the birds going to have a place to live? Yeah. I turned them off at a very early age. Of Christmas. They were like, oh no, the birds are not going to have any place to live and all this kind of stuff. So Santa is not in my house. It's not in our psyche. And I told him, I said, listen, if you were to give me something, like you just drew this, because I remember my daughter drawing a pair of Timberlands when she was 8, and I realized she had a talent for drawing. She drew a pair of Timberland boots. It was so proportionate. And I said, would you want me, you gave me this picture, do you want me to say that your sister gave it to me? She said, no, I gave it to you. I said, well, me and your mother go out and work to buy you guys toys. Do you want me to give Santa Claus, to say Santa Claus did it, want me to tell a lie, or do you want me to tell the truth? They said, no. So I let them know, we're not giving credit to a bearded white guy coming down the chimney. Me and your mother work hard for this stuff, and you get toys year round. Okay, so we're not going there. Just tell the truth. Be honest. Quit being so afraid of everything. Hell, me and my wife got married in black. We weren't virgins. Virgins supposed to get married, and we weren't. What the hell? I like the black suit I had. Who cares? These people that you're trying to, as far as your belief system and as far as your you're trying to accommodate people who have no bearing on your bills and on your life. Speak the truth and keep it moving, and you'll be fine. That drop is not from 20 stories. It's like 2 inches. Matter of fact, it's not even a drop. You'll see. But I want to put that PSA service guy. I'm not saying, listen, because I haven't watched the news, I don't feel like I'm lagging behind intellectually in anything, because I know what's going on. I know about the gas thing. You're going to learn that through osmosis. But I cannot tell you how liberating it is. Listen, I'm 58. I'm in the third quarter of my life. I'm not getting ready to give that to Trump and Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm not doing that. You can't get that. That belongs to my grandchildren, to my family. You can't get all of my attention. You can't dictate the direction of where my attention goes. And I think just putting that in perspective is going to help with all of this stuff too, because the news and the media is going to give you ideas that you're going to regurgitate out here.
Wow, you are absolutely onto something there. I think that's tremendous. I had not considered it in that way before, so thank you for sharing that with us. I do have one more question here.
That's fine.
White people like me would like to speak up because this upsets me, but I feel inadequate to speak on this issue. Do you have any suggestions for me?
Don't feel inadequate. You are in America, okay? They say when, whites catch a cold, blacks catch the flu. Let me tell you something. A lot of times, I'm not saying in many cases, but that white guy that's on the corner, begging for food, he's a suit and a tie and a shave and a shower away from being in a whole different category. Okay? Don't feel inadequate at all. Go to YouTube and pull up what's his name? Wise. What's the guy? His last name? Tim Wise. Just go to YouTube and watch Tim Wise. Go to YouTube and look at some of the things that Robin DiAngelo has to talk about. She is totally unapologetic with her stance. I love Robin DiAngelo. We're on the same page. Listen, we're running around talking about destroying Confederate monuments. These Confederate monuments, these daggone Confederate people that lived 150, 200 years ago, you're upset with them. And you want to bring these down. But this church who has a white Jesus right out in front of their church, and this building who has a white Jesus, you're not talking about tearing that down? But you want to tear Confederate monuments down, but you don't want to tear white Jesus down? That's a shame. Let's sit back, regroup, take a different perspective on this thing, okay? And let's look at what's really psychologically important here. But don't feel inadequate. Watch Robin DiAngelo. She's going to empower you, I promise.
Thank you, Jeremiah, for this education, because that's what I feel like our time with you has been for me today. I want to remind everyone, Jeremiah's films are Contradiction, A Question of Faith, and Holy Hierarchy, The Religious Roots of Racism in America. And on YouTube, his series is Slave Sermons. And that brings us to a close for this incredible session. Thank you so much, Jeremiah Camara.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. You can see I've had fun with it. So.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's been really great. And everyone, you've got about 15 minutes for a short break. Do pop into our exhibit hall, and we look forward to seeing you back here for our next speaker, Mandisa Thomas. And I know she's going to be excellent as well. Thank
Absolutely.
you. See you soon.
I appreciate you. Thank you.